Hello. My name is Jim Ison. I was a friend of Trent's. Before I begin my remarks, I want to take just a second to thank Steve for asking me to say a few words tonight. Steve, it was truly an honor. Trent and I met in high school. He was a senior, I was a sophomore. He was the captain of the football team. I was nothing. He was a wild guy, very intense. And one of the stories I'd like to share was every Wednesday was defense training day, where our defense would prepare for the upcoming Friday night football game. Well, me being a sophomore underclassman quarterback, it was my job to run the plays of the opposing team so that the defense could prepare. Well, every day before practice, we would warm up with calisthenics, and the three football captains would be out front leading us. And we would usually do jumping jacks, which we called woodman jacks, W-O-D, you get it. Well, Trent came up with this great idea that on Wednesdays we would do Ison jacks, just to remind me of the butt whooping that I had coming later on in that practice. And they gave the quarterbacks red jerseys to wear, which meant don't hit the quarterback. But apparently to the seniors, and especially to that crazy linebacker, Schmidt, it was more like a matador skate to a bull. So that was really the extent of our friendship in high school. And then college passed and hadn't heard from him. In 2001, I became a police officer here in Greenwood. And about a year later, I get a phone call, a voicemail at work. I'm checking my voicemail. It says, "Hey, Jim, this is Trent Schmidt. Could you give me a call?" And I'm thinking, what has he done? So I call him back, and he says to me, I'm going to school to become a pastor. And I darn near dropped over. He follows it up by saying, "I'd like to come out and do a ride-along with you because I was thinking of becoming a chaplain for the police department or sheriff's department." So I agreed. He came out. We had a great time. We caught up. Had some very good discussions. Had dinner. Really, our friendship began that day. From that day on, Trent kept in touch. We talked to each other. We played golf, meet for coffee, and just really grew into a good friendship. About a year after that, Trent calls me and he says, "Hey Jim, my father's retiring as pastor of Trent Church. I'm going to be inducted this Sunday as the new pastor. Would you be there?" I said, "I wouldn't miss it for the world, bud." So my wife Mindy and I, we come up here and we watched that and enjoyed it with him. And it seemed that after he became the lead pastor here at Triumph, our friendship, our contact became a little more sporadic. Trent was very busy. We'd make plans to do something, and it wasn't uncommon that Trent would call me and say, "Hey Jim, I have to postpone that. A member of my church is sick. I have to go to the hospital, or I have to do a funeral, or I have to do a wedding." He was very, very busy. And then, about 4 years ago, I get another phone call from Trent. He says, "I'm stepping down as pastor from the Triumph Church." And, "Why, Trent?" He says, "Because I found a new calling. I'm going to go into the Army. I want to be a soldier." And that didn't surprise me at all, because knowing Trent and some of the discussions that we had, he looked up to his brother Todd quite a bit. And I think he wanted to follow in Todd's footsteps. And the other thing that really rang out was Trent missed the camaraderie of being on a team, having someone's back and being there for him. And that was what Trent was great at. So that didn't surprise me at all. So he goes off into the Army, and it seems that our contact became even more sporadic. Just to the fact that he was most of the time out of state and sometimes out of country. But when he went to Afghanistan, for whatever reason, whether it be fate or just coincidence, I started running into Steve all the time. The banks, the grocery store, restaurants. I pulled him over for speeding. Sorry, Steve. It is church, we gotta be honest. So, no, I did not give him a ticket. If we had time, I'd love to tell that story. But anyway, one of the things that I'm trying to get to is Steve communicated back and forth through Trent and I, because Trent wasn't allowed to use the phone a lot and email in Afghanistan. And one of the things that really rang clear to me was last summer, my father got really ill, and he was in Community South Hospital. And that first night, he was on life support, and I had spent the night at the hospital. And I don't know, it was probably about 11 o'clock the next day. I had some decisions to make, and I was sitting in the waiting room alone, beside myself, filling out some paperwork for the hospital. And I get done, and I'm getting ready to walk out to take the paperwork back to the nurse's station, and lo and behold, here comes Steve walking off the elevator. I said, "Jim, what are you doing?" I told him the bad news, and he says, "You know, I'm here to see a member of my church who's really ill. Let me do that, and then if you don't mind, I would really appreciate it if you'd let me go pray for your dad." And I thought that was real nice, and he did. And then afterwards, he gave me some words of encouragement and a hug, and that was exactly what I needed at that time. So my father did pass, and a few days later, I get an email from Afghanistan, and it's Trent. And he says to me, "Hey brother, sorry to hear about your father. I wish I could be there for you. Know that my thoughts and prayers are with you, and I'll see you when I get back." And I took a minute, and I stopped and I thought, wow, this guy's over there in hell, in a combat zone, going through God knows what, and he takes the time out to send me an email because he's worried about me. That's the type of person Trent was. He's always concerned about other people. Then, back in December, Trent came home, and unfortunately, we couldn't get our schedules together, so he had a lot of family to catch up with, and it was Christmas time, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to be at Starbucks with my dad. Why don't you come up here? I know you're working. We'll catch up." So I did. I was on duty. Don't tell anybody. Stopped off there. Had a cup of coffee with Steve and Trent, and I got into talking a little bit to Trent about Afghanistan and some of his experiences. And he told me a little bit. He told me about, how nasty the conditions were and about some of the people. And then he told me that a good friend of his had been killed recently in combat, and that he was planning a trip after Christmas to go pay his respects to that person's family out in Las Vegas. After that, I kind of started thinking to myself, I wonder how Trent's doing. Trent's worried about everybody else, but I wonder how Trent is doing with some of the things he's done and some of the things he's seen. Well, just as I was starting to get into that with him, a woman comes in and says that she's had an accident out on 135, so that was the end of our conversation. I had to go back to work. About 3 weeks ago, Steve called me, and he says, let's meet for coffee. So I go over there and I meet Steve at Starbucks, and we have some conversations. And I asked Steve, "How is Trent doing? How do you think he's doing?" This is weighing on my mind. And Steve says to me, I think he's doing okay, but quite honestly, Trent doesn't talk to me about it all that much. And I told Steve that even though it's on a much smaller scale, kind of understood. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, in the line of work I'm in, I was forced to take a life. And I've lost friends, had friends critically injured on duty. So even though it's to a much smaller scale than what Trent went through, I felt like I needed to share that with him. And as a matter of fact, he didn't even know about that because he was gone when all that happened. And maybe get him to open up to me a little bit if he was having some problems. Well, I thought I was going to get that chance. Last Monday morning, Trent called me. Why so early, I'll never know. But he called me about 7:30 in the morning and said, hey, I'm going to be home for a week. I want to meet up with you. I said, Trent, your timing's impeccable. I just had sinus surgery. And I was way under the weather. So, long story short, we had taken a rain check to meet later on in the week when I was feeling better. Well, later on in the week to me was Friday. And Friday morning, about 7:45, I get another knock at the door. And it's a friend of mine from work. And that friend, I could tell there was something wrong, told me of the accident about Trent. And then I spent the entire weekend trying to wrap my mind around how that could happen and why that would happen. And Sunday evening, I think it finally hit me. It doesn't matter. We're not remembered. We're not defined by our death. We're defined by the way we live. And Trent lived his life well. Trent was a loving son, brother. He was a damn good friend, compassionate person. He was pastor to this church and this community for 4 years. And that time he led countless numbers of people to Christ and was there for people in their lowest times of need. And then in the final chapter of Trent's life, he was a soldier, where he fought proudly for our freedoms and our country, in a third world mountainous country that none of us who haven't been there couldn't understand. Truth is, probably only God, Trent, and those who served with him actually know what he went through over there. But it's for all those reasons that I will remember Trent, for the nice, generous, compassionate person that he was. And above all, he was an American hero. He really was.